Payne, nice to see you again on this beautiful day. And this time, again, with a quote from Carl Gustav Jung. He says, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." I give another quote which fits. "The most dangerous psychological mistake is the projection of our own shadow onto others. This is the root of almost all conflicts." So, what do you think, Peyton? How do we become aware of our shadow, and how can we work with it and learn to deal with it?
Wonderful topic. Wonderful topic. This is something that I actually noticed in my own life before ever reading Carl Gustav Jung, but obviously much less clearly than he did. But I noticed when I was maybe in college era that the people that I found most irksome to me, the people that really struck a pet peeve, were the ones that I actually shared the sort of negative traits that I perceived in them. And so for me at the time, I was really, and even since, one trait of mine that I find the most irksome in other people is pride. And because this is a trait that I struggled with for years, and for a while, sort of had this weird relationship where I allowed it to totally take me over, while also simultaneously judging it in myself, and therefore I judged it harshly in other people. And when I noticed it in other people, especially when they didn't seem to be as self-judgmental as I was about this, I would find it super irksome, super pet peevey in a way that was like specifically latched onto by my brain, and very much would drive me crazy about others. And then I noticed this with other things too. Maybe people were too loud and boisterous and inconsiderate and not conscious of it or whatever, or these various traits that I perceived in myself, that I judged in myself. When I would see them in others, those were the things that would just drive me crazy. Whereas the traits in other people that I didn't share, for instance, greed, or for instance, whatever, like these, there's plenty of vices to go around. If I did not share those, then they would kind of wash right off of me. I would notice that, I would maybe see the cause and effect, but it wouldn't drive me crazy in the same ways as these traits that on some level I was grappling with myself or judging within myself. And I've noticed since that this actually runs way deeper in my own patterns of anger or in frustrations with others than I ever used to be conscious of. And I feel like I'm still in the process of becoming more and more conscious of this, partly through some stuff that a coach of mine pointed out in the last year, and has been able to point me towards a few times when I was kind of unconsciously being really angry at somebody, when I was in this sort of fixation about how pissed off I was that this person was being this way. Pretty much always he's been able to point out that, okay, what is that way? Tell me about the things that you are accusing him of in your mind, or the things that a part of you is accusing him of in your own mind. And really don't hold back. Really be unfiltered. Say exactly how you feel in your most emotional state when you're maximally frustrated. Oh, this person is this, and this person's doing this, and he's doing this because he doesn't want other people to know this, and he's doing this, and he's being this way, and he's acting like this. And he would write them down, all these accusations that I would make. Okay, he's like this, 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 yes. And then he's like, okay, now let's read through this list and tell me whether or not it's true that these are judgments that you have about yourself, or these are things that you don't like about yourself. And then what reading through that list, I was like, oh shit, yeah, like these are exactly things that I judge about myself. And this opened my eyes to the fact that when I'm really upset at somebody, when I'm really irked and I just am holding on to it and I'm ruminating over it, I'm stewing over it, and it just drives me crazy because of a pet peeve. Almost always in my own life and at my own experience, if I bring more and more consciousness, more awareness to my own patterns, I find that these angers towards other people that are so sticky in my mind are forms of projection, are forms of self-judgment of these traits or parts of myself that I haven't fully accepted about myself or that I haven't fully integrated in myself that I'm projecting and judging on this person over there. And this is an insight that is hard to swallow at first and kind of humbling. But this is the first step of a foundation of awareness and consciousness over these traits that can then open the door to us seeing these things more clearly and being able to have a more aware and intentional relationship with these things. So I'm curious, in your experience, have you also noticed these patterns of what we judge in others tends to originate from what we judge in ourselves? And is it that all forms of anger that we feel come from projection, or is it just certain forms of anger that come from projection that have certain characteristics?
Well, how yeah, sure. I also felt that in myself. For example, when I was in the Philippines, when the tour guide said, "Okay, be here at 8:30, because then you should be here." That would not in any way respect the time of the people, because then, ah, yeah, wait here, another hour passed, you know. And it was driving me crazy. So I was like, I don't like to wait. I skip lines. When I see a line, I don't go there, you know? Even if I want to drink something or go into a cafe, if there's a line outside, I won't go there because I hate staying in lines. And mm, this trait that I hate so much when I see in others is also what I judge myself on. Like, being not punctual in school, for example. I never was really punctual in the beginning of the day. Now, at work, sometimes it didn't work to be on time. So I was like not aware of the fact that I'm time blind, but I'm judging myself on it maybe. So this is this is an example that an irritation signals something which is in resonance with my identity or the structure I have, um, and that I can just integrate and accept because we humans are not flawless. Um, yeah, and so anger. You asked about anger. I don't think that all kinds of anger stem from projection. Some of them are just when we are triggered by something, but all projections maybe come from a trigger. Everything that triggers us, yeah, we have to analyze it and look at it and really take a deep insight on that, and then maybe ask, okay, why is that triggering me so much? Maybe find a meaningful story which you can use for, yeah, creating some new habit out of it or an intention to change it. And then it's basically the self-awareness you need to have in order to see the triggers that trigger you and look for patterns. Maybe you can find anything which regularly occurs, like in the relationship with loved ones, and you always go into the same pitch of voice and you always have the same accusations. Every time you meet, this dynamic is the same. If you identify a pattern like this, then the next step is just to set the intention to use the trigger to have to implement a different behavior. And what stems from that is then just a usual behavior change. But for that, you need awareness of it. Okay, and how is awareness beneficial in that regard, in your opinion, Baden?
It's central to changing our relationship with our shadow, in my opinion. So the first step to being able to change our relationship with our anger toward others that is sticky. So not the anger that just flares up in the moment to give us strength in response to the exact situation that's in front of us, but the sticky anger where we're just caught up in rumination at 6 a.m. about this person that we're just so irritated by. That kind of anger. To change our relationship with those judgments towards others, we first need to change our relationship with our judgments toward ourselves or the shadow parts of ourselves. And maybe these are even unconscious judgments where we are trying to deny that this part of ourself even exists. And I think that this is where a lot of times these things start off for us, where we're so irked by this person because we don't even admit to ourselves, or we're not even conscious of the fact that we're not accepting this part of ourselves. So we have this tendency that we do XYZ things sometimes, that we don't like this aspect of how we show up sometimes, etc. And we're not even opening our eyes to the fact that this arises in our lives. And so to change this, the first step before we can change, to integrate any of these aspects about ourselves is first to see. First to see what is there to be integrated. What am I not facing about my own self? What am I not accepting or even admitting to myself about the ways that I show up that aren't aligned with my values or my wishes? And then from that awareness, we can then say, okay, yeah, I do see this part of myself. And then once we see, then we can take the next step of accepting that, okay, yes, I would like to move in this direction. Yes, I do see an opportunity to grow in a way that is more aligned with my values. First, I need to accept where I'm at so that I can see the path from here to there. First, need to know where I am at right now in order to know where I can grow. And so the awareness and the admitting to ourselves these uncomfortable truths that we oftentimes don't want to face, a lot of times is the first step toward improving ourselves. Admitting, accepting, and then orientating, I think is kind of the order of these things. And so the sort of next question on that is, once we become aware, once we become conscious of this part of ourselves that we don't like, for instance, then how do we go the next step further in integrating this? Of course, judging this part that we're now seeing more and more intensely probably is not going to free us of it. And so, what can free us with it? What can be a way that we can work with our shadow once we start to see our shadow?
Well, everything we want is transformation. We want to grow, we want to transform ourselves into better humans. And if we see that we are angry because somebody displays a trait, we don't particularly like that trait about ourselves, then maybe we can, yeah, after the steps you described, after we accepted that, we can even transform the stuff which is in the parts we deny ourselves into things that are really helpful for us. For example, anger can maybe be directed towards a situation where you are treated unfairly, and that is totally transformable into healthy confidence where you say, okay, I know my worth, and express that calmly. And that goes with every kind of trait you deny yourself, or most of the traits. Because oftentimes it stems from the situations where we are in school and we have to sit still. In Germany, probably more than in the US. I don't know, from what I imagine.
We copied Germany's education system, so now we have to sit still too. You guys, it's your
Uh,
guys' fault.
Damn Taylorism. I'm looking forward to the
Exactly.
times which are right now, where just children can be educated according to their brain capacity and according to their traits. Yeah, luckily this Taylorism will soon be over, where you don't have to sit still and really be quiet, despite you being more like an active child, a talker instead of a listener, maybe, or a sports guy instead of a fine arts student, you know. But in the school system, how we experienced it, everybody was treated the same way, and so you had to suppress certain kinds of traits, and therefore you still may be suppressing them. So it is like the cage which society gave you, and you deny it still because you learned this kind of behavior to not fall out of the tribe, to fit into the group. And we can reintegrate that into ourselves, become individuals again from our core if we discover this, if we really are aware triggers us, or even where we find beauty in, what resonates with us. Because triggering is just a special kind of resonance. We feel it, that it is meaningful to us. It is like a high energy thing that is important to us. But as well, if you see a beautiful flower, if you hear a beautiful song, for me this is also triggering, but in a beautiful way. So even the non-shadow things, and shadow doesn't mean good or bad. I think Jung describes it as some kind of identity, parts of the unconscious identity which we deny ourselves. And the triggering moments I would describe as like identity self-preservation mechanisms. And when we reintegrate them, we become more human. And this is a nice goal to have, to become more human, and to become the way we were meant to become, to fulfill the potential which is in our genes, in our environment, in ourselves, and not to be held back by old beliefs. And there, this notion of learned helplessness comes into play as well, where if you put a blanket on a glass with a fly in it, and the fly always flies like that. It was a flea, I guess the experiment was done with some kind of flea, I don't know. But the thing jumped only as high as uh, it was topped, and when you removed it, it didn't jump higher because it learned this kind of helplessness. Um, this is a beautiful message because it is all in our minds. We can escape in our minds first, and with that, jump out into the real world. So, even with our anger, transform it into calm confidence, for example. Or creativity we suppressed, we can transform it into a skillful combination of playing the guitar while painting. I don't know. You know, there's ways of reintegrating the things which are true about ourselves, even if they are not fit for society all the time, really can be healthy to us. What do you think?
The question then becomes what works and what doesn't work when we want to integrate parts of ourselves, when we want to transform parts of ourselves. This is where I've gone wrong for most of my life. And this is where I think that what we learn in the conditioning of our culture and in school, like you point out, is totally counterproductive if we internalize that stance toward the part of ourselves that we don't like. Meaning, if we try to transform parts of ourselves that we don't like by fighting against them, or by judging them, or by shaming them, or by banishing them, or by repressing them, the cause and effect doesn't work. It actually doesn't transform these things and make them go away and help us have a more peaceful relationship with them and help us get them under control, etc. And this is something that I would encourage anybody to just examine in their own life. What is the cause and effect when we try to work with parts of ourselves through sort of internal violence and self-judgment and anger versus an alternative approach, which many of us are not taught, which is actually effective, is to first see these parts of ourselves, first recognize where they come from. In other words, this angry part of myself that is overreacting in this situation and is getting in my own way because it is doing X, Y, and Z destructive thing. What is this part's intention? And then we can see, oh, this part actually has a good intention. This part is trying to protect me from something. Or this other part over here that I judge about myself. This part is trying to puff myself up or trying to tell a story about how I'm a hero or whatever. What is this part trying to do? Oh, this part is trying to prevent me from being unfairly diminished or from not having my voice heard or something like this. Oh, it's trying to help me actually, even if it's doing it in a way that's causing real problems. It's trying to do its best. It's trying to do good. And so this more kind stance towards parts of ourselves, this is where transformation can actually occur and integration can actually occur, in my experience. The cause and effect of fighting against ourselves, judging ourselves, shaming ourselves, suppressing parts of ourselves, and denying parts of ourselves, it actually, like, just pay attention in your own life whether or not that yields good fruit. And we all, generally speaking, find it doesn't yield good fruit. It doesn't actually work. Having a kind relationship with these parts of ourselves, where first we start with bringing consciousness toward them. First, we start with seeing them. First, we start with recognizing their intention, even feeling gratitude that, hey, thank you for trying to protect me, angry part. Thank you for trying to do your best to make sure that I don't get stepped on and taken advantage of. You felt pain in the past, and now you're trying to protect me from feeling the same pain. I recognize you. I see what you're trying to do. Thank you. Now, let's talk about, what do you need? What are you trying to find? Are you trying to find safety? Are you trying to find security? Are you trying to find love? Let's talk about how we can help you feel those things. Let's talk about how we can make you a good part of the team where you're doing your role when you're needed and you're being led from a place of more awareness, more consciousness, etc. This new relationship with the parts of ourselves that we tend to judge, we tend to not like, we tend to want to wish away, or we tend to want to fight, if we can instead work with them and get on their same side and put our arms around them and say, I recognize you, I see what you're trying to do. Thank you for trying to be a valuable member of this team. Now let's work together. Let's collaborate. Let's figure out what a healthy integrated relationship with you as a part of the overall squad looks like. Let's figure out when it's
Mm.
really helpful for you to come up and do your job. Let's talk about what it looks like to do your job in a really healthy and fruitful and beneficial way. Maybe it's not lashing out and screaming and overreacting and flipping tables and overriding the system and flooding the body with adrenaline and cortisol, but maybe it's pushing back in this moment. Maybe it's actually, if you sense that XYZ happens, this is a response that can be useful. Let's talk about how you can do your job in a way that is really useful, because you've got to do your job. You're an important member of the team. And this sort of reframing, super counterintuitive for me. Like, I felt from my starting point with all these was, I've just got to beat my shit into submission. I've just got to shame myself into not acting this way anymore, thinking in this way anymore, etc. But the cause and effect of approaching it that way just doesn't work. It doesn't actually help us to transform them. And by actually becoming friends with the most difficult parts of ourselves first, recognizing their intentions, having goodwill toward them, helping them feel that we do love this part of ourselves, we do appreciate what you're trying to accomplish here, and let's talk about how we can give you all that you need and work together in a very productive, useful, harmonious way that serves the big picture of our lives and that moves things in the right direction and moves our big picture toward harmony and not toward destruction. These conversations can actually happen. These transformations can actually happen from a place of harmony and flow and alignment, not from a place of self-conflict and fighting. This self-conflict and fighting is the sort of shadow parts, banished parts that leads to these projections onto others, etc. And a more harmony, a more we're on the same team, a self-love and a love toward all parts of ourselves. This is the foundation of creating the space and the capacity to where we can actually work with these things and examine what a healthier relationship might look like and how they can show up in our lives in a way that's integrated and beneficial, as opposed to them feeling like they're shoved under the surface unless they fight and bust through to hijack the whole system and then go apeshit, because now's their chance to take over and do all the things they feel desperately needing to do, and they know they're going to be shoved down again. This is a pattern that I think a lot of us can see in our own lives with our shadow when we are trying to suppress them and fight against them. And so bringing it up, looking at them, shining a light on them, and then giving them this positive welcome is really the counterintuitive approach that can give us far more capacity to transform our relationship with these events in our lives, in my experience, and I think in the ways that I see this show up in others as well. So that's kind of my last thoughts on this. Do you have any last shares about this integration, or this seeking harmony and transformation within ourselves, and really the ways that we might need to reshape our approach?
Approach you talk about is acceptance, self-love, and making the unconscious conscious. And the same thing is like when Jung said, unless you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And this
Mm,
is the lever we have. We pull it up into our consciousness and really trying to work with it. Trying to make it transparent so that we see it, and see it for all the good, see it for all the things that don't matter, and see it for all the bad. And then trying to integrate that into ourselves again. And yeah, with a loving kindness approach like you talked about, this is probably the most fruitful one, because as we all know, resistance bears resistance, and if you try to pull a donkey, it will resist even further. But a gentle persuasion works best. There's a beautiful saying, but I don't really know how it goes. But you can catch more flies with a drop of honey than with 2 bags of horse shit, or something like that. And, uh, I don't know whether this fits into here, but yeah, the drop of honey is really worth it as well for yourself. You can love yourself just like that. You can be kind to yourself just like that. You don't have to beat yourself or parts of yourself into submission until they do what you want. Because who will you become when you're not conscious of who you are, the parts you try to suppress? So it always backfires if you use force against yourself. And this is very nice to remind us that there's value in not judging and not being overly judgmental towards yourself and towards others. Because then you can also see the benefits in the situation. Maybe you integrate a more long-term view, because why does Jung state that the most dangerous mistake is the projection of our shadow onto others? Dangerous, I think he means in terms of delaying the harm which comes from the projections, or the hidden risks. If you do this, there are hidden risks inside, because maybe in the moment you feel good, because you think you understand the situation, because he does that, because he wants to do that, but more probably, it's just distorting the relationship, and so the back and forth you will have in the future will be framed by your perspective, which doesn't necessarily have to be true, and very probably isn't.
mm,
And with that, you risk an integrated and true relationship with each other if you just talk through the lens of your projections. So it will hinder actually your own realization of your own issues, and also will hinder your personal evolution. You won't grow if you won't face what is real about you. And you probably will grow better if you don't judge yourself overly, because a plant also needs love and care to grow. You cannot force it to grow. It just needs the right environment to grow. So put yourself into a new environment if you don't like that you display this trait more often lately. Put yourself out of the bar if you don't like to drink beer too much with old friends. Put yourself into the library instead, for example. Or, yeah, you can translate that into any life situation. Just treat yourself as a gardener of your own life. Give yourself some nutrition. If you are in darkness too long, then give yourself some sun. Go into nature, connect. This is probably a good thing to be reminded of. To not judge, to not be attached too much, and to not resist. And if that is the case, we are more probably not staying blind to ourselves and to our own flaws. With that, we can probably better make the unconscious conscious, and we can take the steering wheel of our own life back into our hands and don't call it fate anymore, but luck created by ourselves. Or how would you describe it if we take back the
Agency.
steering wheel?
Agency.
Agent.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
And my intention for right now is I actually am kind of in the middle of some sticky anger. That sort of the rumination or the sticky frustration that is a symptom of or a signal that there's probably some projection there. And so right now in my own life, I do have an intention to do some self-examination. What are the judgments that I'm casting toward this other person? And really, are these judgments that I have toward myself? Are these things that are unaddressed within me, in my own relationship with parts of myself that I'm trying to push out over there onto some image of another person? I can sense that there's some unconsciousness in my own patterns right now as it relates to this. And so, one of my intentions for today is to really do some good journaling and self examination about this. Where am I currently unconscious about these parts of myself? Where is my shadow hidden or repressed or pushed under the surface? And how can I open myself and fully accept and embrace these parts of myself so that I can have a healthier relationship within and therefore a healthier relationship without? So I have some work to do here. Actually, this is kind of uh, this is present, and I think that there is a great opportunity for me to be just more aware of these things and to be able to have this higher agency over my own mind and mindsets as it relates to relationships and situations within my own life. Any intentions from you about projection or the shadow or the week to come?
Yeah, for sure. As well, for the week to come, to be more aware of the triggers that irritate me, to become more aware of what is it actually about myself that resonates it with, to integrate it, and with that, in terms of defining myself or finding myself, and if you know yourself better, you also know what to say no to more, or which parts to leave out, and with that lead a more meaningful existence to yourself, because you really want to grow yourself into the potential version that is in at the core of your being. So this is my intention, to examine my triggers more consciously, to lead them to better self-understanding. Yes. Bro, we have all work to do.
Yes. Agreed.
And with that, have a wonderful week, man, and good luck, and see you soon.
Thank you, my friend. Great talking to you. Have a great week.